Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Tuesday, the 11th of April. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined by a full squad this morning. First of all, Jonny McFarlane, fresh from his blockage from Piers Morgan on Twitter. How are we doing, Jonny?
Good, mate. Good. Yeah, I'm slightly sad not to have Pierce's daily musings. Unlike many, I find Piers quite entertaining. You know, I don't hate him nor like him. I just find him sort of entertaining on Twitter. So now that I'm blocked, it's going to be a sadder world. But there you go.
Yeah, if you've not seen it, folks, if you're on Twitter, go and have a look at Jonny's and even Piers Morgan's timeline. I'll give you a laugh on this Tuesday morning. Stevie Clifford also joins us. How are we doing, Stevie?
I'm very amused by last night's goings on, Derek. Just when you think you've seen it all, Piers Morgan manages to do what all of us have wanted to do on Twitter, and that's what Jonny McFarlane and his wild takes. So yeah, that was very amusing, and we couldn't let that one pass us by. So
yeah,
we had a few comments in there as well. So
yeah,
it was
Stevie,
lots of fun.
Yeah, Stevie and then Davey Edgar having a good old laugh. I didn't expect that when I woke up this morning.
Scaring me.
Yeah, a Twitter spat between Piers Morgan and Jonny McFarlane isn't what I expected when I woke up this morning. But yeah, funny all the same. Not for Jonny, right enough. We'll move swiftly on.
Most people agreed with me, to be fair. Most people agreed with me, looking at it.
Right. Well, there you go. We won't discuss it in case we disclose any spoilers. But people are tuning in because they want to talk all things Rangers. But before we do that, folks, you know the drill by now. Just about housekeeping. Quick mention for our podcast sponsors, Seneca Hair Restoration, the top dogs in the hair transplant business. If you're looking to restore maybe some lost self-confidence, these are the guys to go to. And as ever, I've stuck their website link and their social media pages in the description box. So do go check them out if that is something you're thinking of. You can see the ticker below if you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We've got that offer on the website just now. Just £2 for 2 months worth of content. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details and to sign up at only £2.99 per month thereafter. So even at that, it's an absolute bargain. And if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, over 12,000 of you now subscribing. So thank you to each and every one of you. If you want to subscribe there, it's totally free and you can enjoy daily videos from ourselves every weekday morning. James Strachan getting in early there. Jonny, who's Piers Morgan? I know Jonny is famous due to the Rangers Review. There you go. We should invite Piers on, in fact. We'll see how his schedule is. And we'll see. We'll get him on, and he can argue the case. But anyway, let's talk Rangers, because big news that emerged yesterday. Of course, we know from the fallout of Saturday's Old Firm derby, Rangers wrote to the SFA seeking an explanation to the performance of Kevin Clancy. It follows a decision to rule out an Alfredo Morelos goal that I think every pundit across the land says it was the wrong decision. Dermot Gallagher on Ref Watch on Sky yesterday said that Celtic were very lucky that goal was ruled out. The SFA have responded. First of all, Ian Maxwell, the SFA chief executive, said that Kevin Clancy had received a barrage of abusive messages over the holiday weekend since that game, which had been referred to Police Scotland. I'll read you what Ian Maxwell said, first of all, before Rangers' response, folks. He said, the nature of the messages go way beyond criticism of performance and perceived decision-making. Some are potentially criminal in nature and include threats and abuse towards Kevin and his family. We have referred the correspondence to the police and condemn this behaviour in the strongest possible terms, as well as the posting of a referee's personal details online with the sole purpose of causing distress. Football is our national game. It improves and saves lives. Without referees, there is no game, and while discussions will always be debated with or without the use of VAR, we cannot allow a situation to develop where a referee's privacy and safety and those of his family are compromised. We all have a responsibility to protect our game and those essential to it. Now, Rangers responded later on yesterday evening It said, firstly, Rangers condemns in the strongest terms any abuse of match officials. We are all passionate about our game, but targeted personal abuse of referees cannot be tolerated. The club can confirm the Scottish FA has responded with regards to the disallowed Alfredo Morelos goal, with the response claiming the correct decision was taken. The club is astonished by this, especially given most observers, including former referees and former players, could see no issue with the goal standing. This comes following a weekend in England where PGMOL have offered an apology to Brighton and Hove Albion for the non-award of a penalty in their match with Tottenham Hotspur, alongside a pledge to review the incident. While an apology does not alter the outcome of the match, such responsibility and openness would be welcome in Scotland. The SFA are backing their man, Jonny. Are you surprised by that?
No, they're always going to. Of course they are. You saw, though, that down south, as Rangers has pointed out in their statement, that they admitted a mistake in the Brighton game just there at the weekend, and you'd have to ask if we need to start thinking about having a similar sort of attitude in Scotland. I think it would be good, personally. I think you need to ask yourself whether or not the culture's ready for it, given the heightened tensions that exist between Rangers and Celtic and around the fixture. But it's something I think we should do as a footballing country. You know, if you make mistakes, you come out, you hold your hands up, and you move on to the next thing. It goes without saying that any abuse is awful of Kevin Clancy. He shouldn't be getting targeted. All right-minded people think that, but that's not to say that he should not be scrutinised. And his performance is being scrutinised, and as long as it's constructive, then that's going to happen if you're a football referee operating in Scottish football. I think the bigger story here really is that the SFA have come back to Rangers and said that there was no mistake made, which flies in the face of not just pundits and fans, but also experts now. Yes. I mean, yes, there is clearly a push on Alistair Johnston by Alfredo Morelos. Of course there is. But the push is a continuation. You need to... I keep saying this to people, right? Because I initially saw it and thought it was a foul. You need to watch the whole exchange between the two players. It's all part of the same thing. It's a continuation of the same 4-second incident. If you're not watching the whole thing, if you're just looking at that push, it's a push. But there's no way to disrupt between the jostling and then the push. It's all part of the same thing. They're fouling each other. You can't give a foul for one and not the other.
Yes.
So everyone agrees with that. I think I don't think I've read a single person, not even pundits that are normally quite sort of vociferously happy to go against the sort of Rangers narrative. I don't think I've seen anyone say that this wasn't a penalty. I mean, even crikey. I mean, I think Andy Walker, for example, was absolutely on board with Alan McCoist and what he had to say during the game. So Rangers are going to be pursuing that, and that's going to be part of what they do. Whenever they have something like this, clearly they're going to want answers about why a decision like that's made, and that's only right to get answers. And now they've got them. I'm assuming that they're not going to be very satisfied with what they've been told. There's a bigger question for me actually about refereeing, which is, see if there is a technicality here, right? So, for example, and Stevie, I really want... Stevie's the man to ask about this, given his refereeing background, but I think what the SFA will be saying privately is it's not clear and obvious because there's a push. So VAR wouldn't want to intervene because under their criteria, it has to be a clear and obvious error. And because there is a push, it's not clear and obvious. Despite everyone thinking it's a penalty, it doesn't fall under the clear and obvious criteria. I think there needs to be some relaxation about that, to an extent that if it's a decision that people think in the VAR room could be construed as likely to be wrong, never mind about the clear and obvious criteria, then they should alert Kevin Clancy he might want to have a look at it again. There's no harm in him. Now, it might lead to more stoppages in games, and it might be that in 6 months' time we say, no, that didn't work actually. But I think you've got to evolve the system. And for me, I'd like to see that element of it evolved a little bit. I saw a referee, I think it was Stuart Dougal, talking about this when he was on the BBC show, which is basically his whole role is to go back and look at VAR decisions. So to me, that would be a smart move to come out of this, to evolve the system so that this kind of mistake gets picked up in future. It's no benefit to Rangers. The ultimate problem here is that Rangers have been denied what would have been a very, very important lead in a huge game that could have swung the title race in a different direction. That's gone. That's water under the bridge. And we all know that there was more to this game than Kevin Clancy in terms of mistakes Rangers made that led to the result. But again, we can't reverse time, and we don't know how it would have panned out should that goal have been awarded. It might have been completely different. And that's what Rangers fans and Rangers themselves will have to live with. But I think going forward, we can improve VAR for everyone. I've never been a big advocate of the conspiracy theory or anything like that. I don't think this is about Kevin Clancy having an agenda against Rangers. I really don't. I just think Kevin Clancy is not I don't think a terrific ref. I don't think many of them are in there. And Derek, I wholeheartedly back your article this morning. I think we should have full-time refs so they can dedicate themselves to their profession. I think that'll make it a lot better. But we mock other clubs who spend time talking about conspiracy theories, and that's always been my position, regardless. I think it's about competency, and that's what we should be focusing on.
Yeah. Listen, Stevie, you are a referee, of course. What did you make of the display at the weekend, the SFA statement? It appears, it reminds me of the famous Lemmy clip where he says, don't back down, double down, with regards to Kevin Clancy. I can see why that they've backed their man, but I find that alarming going forward. If we're saying that that's the correct decision, when everyone, as Jonny said, everyone is in disagreement with that, then that is concerning.
What I would say about Kevin Clancy's display at the weekend is it was very inconsistent. There was very key moments where he got things completely wrong and then would give other decisions completely against what he'd already given. So a couple of examples of that are Callum McGregor, when he didn't book Callum McGregor for taking down Todd Cantwell, when Todd Cantwell is breaking into a midfield that's completely wide open and he stops a promising attack. He then books him a couple of minutes later for raising his hands to Nico Raskin. So that is really difficult for me to understand. And then there was 3 occasions at the start of the second half within 8 minutes where Greg Taylor pulls down Malik Tillman, and then Alistair Johnson forearm into the face of Ryan Kent, and then we had Kyogo go through the back of Ben Davies. Now, each of them are all cautions. That's 4 he's missed. Todd Cantwell gets a caution immediately for his first foul when he takes a boy on the touchline. Now, Todd Cantwell should have been cautioned. I don't have an issue with that in the slightest. What I have an issue with is why does he get it and nobody else does in that situation? So that becomes really difficult for me. There's other situations in that game. There was one given against Alfredo Morelos just after Rangers equalised. There was a long ball and Carter Vickers completely misjudges the jump and he just misses it and he gives a foul against Alfredo and Alfredo hasn't even touched him. There was one given against Malik Tillman at the end of the first half where Malik Tillman goes in and Alistair Johnson goes through him in the slide tackle and he gives a free kick to Celtic, which I found extraordinary. And there was plenty of decisions like that. He was in the way quite a lot, Kevin Clancy, on Saturday. If you watch the game again, and I'll point to the free kick which Malik Tillman won for Rangers to equalise, he was actually in Tillman's way. Tillman had to more or less push him out the way to get to the ball. That happened quite a few times. So I have issues with that beyond the actual goal that wasn't given. If you want to look at it logically from a refereeing point of view, I can see exactly what he's done and why he's given it, but it's miles by the wrong decision. And that's where VAR should say, stop, you need to go and have a look at this again. Now, if you want to say that Alfredo Morelos has pushed Alistair Johnson, I have no issues with that because it's quite clear how it looks. But what's Moy doing then on Tillman at the front post? Because he two-hand shoves Malik Tillman over before the ball even gets to there, and the ball's in the air at that moment. Why is Ryan Jack being bear hugged? And why is his shirt twisted halfway around his back? These things all happened before Alfredo Morelos is adjudged to have fouled. And we talk about VAR, when it goes to look at offside decisions, then it goes to check possible handballs and things like that. That happened to us at Fir Park. So why are we not doing the same here? This is what the lack of consistency frustrates me a lot. But Kevin Clancy's been here before. In 2009, when Rangers won there 2-1, it was a really inconsistent performance again, Derek. So whilst I don't go down the route of calling him a cheat and being inconsistent and stuff like that, I can see why Michael Beale had issues with it then. I can certainly see why we've got issues with the performance now. Very, very inconsistent. It's difficult to defend. The SFA have an out because they can clearly say that there was a foul in there. And there was. Look, let's be honest about it. Alistair Johnston has misjudged the header coming in. He's felt a push. He's went down. No issues with that whatsoever. My issues is what happened before it. And like Jonny says, it's a continuation of it. It's 6-1. They're both at it. They're both fouling. So when you look at Alfredo Morelos' header at the start of the second half, his shirt is getting ripped right away from him. And here's the inconsistency, because when we were at Ross County and Alfredo Morelos' shirt was getting pulled at the back post and we got a penalty given for that one. And then when we don't get that on Saturday, that's where it becomes really difficult. So, in fact, it wasn't Ross County, apologies, it was Livingston in the 3-0 victory when
yes.
in the first half. Apologies. So that situation there, why is it one moment and then we don't get it the next when it's possibly worse, the decisions or the incidents on Saturday? So it's a really difficult one. I'm not surprised, as I said, by the SFA statement. I'm not surprised by Rangers' reaction. Rangers have done the right thing, writing and seeking clarification, even if it was a wasted kind of attempt because we knew how it was going to come back. It's only weeks ago, Derek, that Motherwell sought an explanation, and I think they even wrote to the SFA to find out why that offside goal for Rangers for Fashion Sakala was allowed to stand. And then they come out and said, well, we're happy with the explanation. I don't see anyone having to go at Motherwell for doing that, although Rangers' position already is getting attacked this morning. I don't see why it's any different. So, listen, from a referee point of view, I think of kind of the inconsistency is my biggest issue with some of the decisions. But I'm at pains to say this as well, and obviously you boys have covered what happens at the weekend. This is not a blame thing on Kevin Clancy for me. Rangers lost that game because Rangers lost the game, not because of what he did or whatever else. He influenced the course of the match. But even if Rangers had taken the lead, there's nothing to say that we would have held on to it or whatever. So I don't go down that route, and I don't want to come across as being like that. But what the frustration for me is what I've discussed. Rangers cost ourselves that goal by really poor defending and not being strong enough at the other side. So this is the issue that I've got. Kevin Clancy, sadly, the decisions on Saturday is what you come to expect, sadly. So that's where we are. Would full-time referees help? I think it would. Would the inconsistency surrounding VAR is a big problem. I've seen when you talk about like VAR and inconsistencies, look at that decision that Kilmarnock never got against St Johnstone for the handball, and that was remarkable.
They get an apology for that.
Okay, so it's remarkable. There's no level of consistency there at all. So that's my problem with it. And I think Saturday highlights that.
I think the part of the problem here is VAR is very difficult to get bedded in. We've seen that in every major league in Europe that's put it in. It's a different skill refereeing in the VAR room as it is refereeing on the pitch. You need to be very cold, calm, analytical, a great communicator. Give me that camera angle, pull that back, 10 seconds there, 10 seconds there. I want that camera 8, camera 2. It's almost like being a TV director. And I think what you're seeing is there's different referees with different capabilities in the VAR studio. Some are flapping and some are taking to it like a duck to water. And I understand the SFA have actually appointed. They're going to try and get the guys who are very good in VAR on VAR and stop rotating this so much.
Yes.
So they'll kind of have VAR specialists, and I think that's a good idea. Then the guys who are good at VAR already, who like VAR, who've got a command of the technology and a command of the communication skills required to make that work, and it's not easy, then they can actually get better and better and better at marshalling that technology, while other guys can focus on being referees. But just one last point, I'd love you, both of you, to chip in on this. Human nature to me is a big thing. And if you're a referee and you're at Celtic Park, and by the way, this will be the same advantage at Ibrox, when there's 60,000 or 52,000 screaming one way and there is nothing screaming the other way, does that not change your perception of a lot of incidents? It's just human nature that when you've got a baying mob screaming at you about a decision, that you kind of, oh, have I missed something? Have I not seen that right? It's a sort of natural instinct. You have to be such a focused, strong personality on what is actually happening in front of you that wouldn't shape your decision making. Referees will say that it doesn't, but I just can't imagine that it does. Perhaps this is kind of an upshot of having zero fans at these games.
They're human beings. They're human beings at the end of the day. And I mean, I see it even down south doing games. They get influenced. The standard of officiating isn't the greatest. They're part-time referees in the lower leagues in England, and you hear that all the time. Managers coming out and saying that referees are being influenced. It has to play a part. I'd imagine it's easier to give decisions for a team, I'd imagine, when there is that sort of arena with so many supporters supporting the one side. And as you say, Jonny, I mean, no Rangers supporters in that ground. And listen, whoever referees the game at Ibrox, it'll probably be similar as well. Of course, there'll be no Celtic fans there. But yeah, that has to come into it.
Tav's goal, Tav's free kick. Sorry to interrupt there, but Tav's free kick hits the net. Silence.
Yeah.
It's very, very rare you get total silence after a moment like that. So I don't know, Stevie, if you think that's an influencing factor on the referees.
I've only ever refereed in front of 20 people and a dog. Jonny, so I can't really say that it's ever influenced what I've done. You know, maximum being a couple of hundred. But look, honestly, I don't think it makes any difference. You're so concentrating on what's going on and where you are and things like that I don't see it being, it's not something that's ever bothered me. And as I said, I'm not in a position to say that I'm as a good, or, you know, I'm very basic amateur, so I can't really comment on that too much, but it doesn't bother me where I am genuinely. Like, you're concentrating on what's going on and what's happened. And I have, in my lifetime, 11 years as a ref, I've been up refereeing Celtic under 18s and stuff like that. And when you're doing these games, you don't think about what you're doing or who you are or what you're refereeing. You referee what's in front of you. So I don't see any of that being a problem. And before we talk about conspiracies or that, Celtic actually won the game I refereed. So let's not have people, you know, going back to the archives looking and everything else. So I don't, honestly, Jonny, I don't think I don't see that as being a problem. I can't really talk about that too much in terms of an experience thing, but for me, you know, it doesn't really affect anything. You just give what you think's right. It's more, as I said, going back to Saturday, when you take out the goal itself, it's the inconsistency level of it. I find it quite difficult that Kevin Clancy, you know, was very quick to give a penalty against Niko Katic in the same fixture, but can't spot the mistakes of, you know, the shirt pulling on Alfredo Morelos and stuff when he's literally in the same position. So these are things that I question why the consistency level is different more than I would go down any other route. But listen, it is what it is. He wasn't, I'll go back to this, as painful as it might be, Rangers are the reason that we lost the game on Saturday. Yeah. And I think it's more our issues that come to the fore rather than that. So that's where I am with it all. As a club, we need to make sure that when it comes to semi-final, and it's worth saying, Derek, like I haven't really spoken to you about Saturday. I haven't been on the show since. I thought we were good on Saturday. I thought we were really well set up. I thought we pressed and counter-pressed and triggered really, really well. And that's all really positive for us. A midfield that's been run over countless times didn't on Saturday. And I think these are all really, really, really good things. Todd Cantwell, Nico Raskin performance, Ryan Jack, I thought were all very good. They weren't good on the ball, which is unfortunate. But we didn't have much going on up front, which is the counter side of it. So, there's positives to take away from Saturday. There's never a positive from a defeat, so understand that. And that's not me sitting here saying that it's different. But there is good things that come out of Saturday, and there's building blocks. But we have to get them in place by the time the semi-final comes. But if you remember what I said to you a couple of weeks ago, Derek, we would run them close on Saturday, would win the semi-final and beat them at Ibrox. So it's set up that way. So let's hope that the way I thought it was going would go that way. And we need to make sure we win that game. So
on that, Stevie, a wee word of hope. I don't know if you remember this time last year, but April began with an Old Firm defeat at Ibrox. We were completely punctured. We thought this was shaping up to be the biggest April in Rangers history, or one of them anyway. And we thought, oh, here we go. This is going to be a disaster. And then by the end of the month, everyone was in dreamland. So I don't think it's going to be the same.
We can beat them, absolutely. Yeah. But we need to concentrate on what we're doing rather than, Saturday's gone now. There's nothing we can do, referee stuff and all that. Put it to the side and concentrate on what we do next.
Yeah.
And that's really important for us. We need to fix our forward line. We need to fix our centre backs. Midfield we can be quite happy with. And if you tweak and get that stuff right, and I'm not saying we should make wholesale changes. That's not what I'm calling for. But if we can get these big moments right, then I think we've got a really good chance when it comes to Hampden. So a lot more impressed with how we set up, a lot more impressed with what Beale did, a lot more impressed with the kind of way that we performed. So it's a defeat, chalk it down, and I really think that we've cost ourselves rather than it being the other way about. And that's not to say that Celtic weren't deserving, because I don't want to go down that route of saying that they didn't deserve it or that. They won the game, so they did deserve it. But we cost ourselves massively.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in. I'll get to a few of them. First of all, just when Jonny was talking about VAR, William Byrne says, I think an ex-pro player should be in the VAR room as they have a better understanding of players' attitudes. Interesting point from Kev Armstrong. It aims at you, Stevie. Stevie once gave a penalty against me for a shove in the box. He's a terrible ref. So there you go. Who responds to that, Stevie?
Kev, I don't remember Kev playing, so that shows you how good a player Kev was. But I've given many penalties in my time, Derek, and they were all correct.
Interesting stuff. Let's get to a few more that are coming in. SH says, morning chaps, how's Jonny after his altercation with Piers Morgan last night? His ego has been damaged, that's for sure. Does Stevie think Ben Davies is worth another chance next season?
This is an interesting one.
I put you on the spot there, Stevie.
No. So we've discussed Ben Davies in full here for a long time, and what I said to everyone back in January when we done this article, Jonny, you'll remember very well, the reaction was quite furious and things like that. What I said at the time, Derek, was I thought Ben Davies was really good on the ball. I thought he was very nice. I thought positionally he was decent enough, and most games he would get through. My big issue with Ben Davies was, could he defend when it really counted? And I hadn't seen it yet to convince myself. Now, after I'd written, there was the semi-final at Hampden and Rugby Park, which is what I was kind of basing this on, and other events or other goals that we had conceded that I'd seen. Fast forward now, we're now in the 11th of April, and I think more people are starting to say, well, maybe he's got a point. I didn't say Ben Davies was a bad player. I didn't criticise him, saying that we should get him out or anything. If people listened to what I said, I had a real issue with, could he defend when we really needed it? Was he strong enough? Was he the commanding centre-half that we needed? The answer, Derek, is no, he's not. Now, I realise that this will upset people. It upset people on Saturday again. You know, you put yourself out there and you give an opinion, and the abuse you get and everything else, it comes with it. But if people actually listen to what I've discussed, I don't think too many people can disagree with what I've been saying. Can Ben Davies really defend when it counts? I don't think he's shown us it yet. So it's all right being nice at home to Dundee United when it's 2-0 and you've not got a lot to do. When you go and play in semi-finals, when you go and play in a League Cup final, he lost Kyogo twice on that League Cup final at cost us. Again on Saturday, for the first goal, he lost Kyogo again. For the second goal, it was a complete disaster of a moment. After he clears it, just go and put that out. And he completely misjudges it. It comes underneath him. He misses a header. It's just a mess. So I realise that Ben Davies might be liked by a lot of people. I completely understand that. And I completely understand that I've got a different opinion to people. My opinion is if Rangers want to move on to a championship winning side, we need a better centre half in there. Is Ben Davies, Derek, as good as Philippe Hollander at defending? The answer is no. And Philippe Hollander was a level that we needed to win the league. So I'm sorry. I appreciate that other people might think differently, but I stand by what I've continually said about Ben Davies, and that is he's very nice, very good on the ball, really nice left foot. He's not a good enough centre half for Rangers.
Your reaction to that, Jonny? I've got to say I'm a fan of his. However, it was a big error from him at the weekend, and his point about Kyogo in that League Cup final as well. I thought he should have got closer to Kyogo. He wasn't the only one to blame, I think, for his opening goal. But there are question marks if he has the physicality to command that Rangers backline. Then
even if you don't agree, boys, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It's not a Nico Katic, Stevie.
I think you're both right and wrong, but I don't think you're necessarily. You've got. There's no doubt that Ben Davies, in terms of the body of evidence that's in front of us at the moment, hasn't shown that he's got the chops to be a defender in the biggest of Rangers games. We've seen him in Champions League games. We've seen him in Celtic games. You've laid out the evidence with Kyogo. I think, to be fair, Kyogo is an excellent player who's been kept quiet for most of these games, but has the quality of movement, a little bit like Alan McCoist back in the day, had the movement to step off and away from the defender and be decisive in crucial moments. I absolutely think Rangers need to go and sign a defender. I'm much more on board with Stevie's opinion than I was 6 months ago. I think his column was quite prescient, and it was sharp in that it was before anyone was kind of really talking about this issue. So I have to give him credit. My position on Ben Davies now is that he's the perfect centre half to play against St Mirren, Dundee United. Moves the ball quickly. Takes it forward like a midfielder, so comfortable on it. But I think Rangers need to get into a situation where they have a better defender for these games. Now, Steven Gerrard did this excellent revolving door position next to Connor Goldson, who's an ever-present. We understand why Connor Goldson's an ever-present, because he's got so many positives. You can play the ball, you can defend, right? It's very difficult to get someone like Connor Goldson to the left of Connor Goldson, because left-sided defenders, as we all know, are very difficult to get. So therefore, there's a big premium on them for the top clubs. So perhaps Ben Davies can play half the amount of games, and another centre-half that comes in, bit more rugged, bit more of a defender, bit more of a Philip Hollander type, comes in for the rest. That, to me, would seem to be a very good alternative to going out and splashing £10 million that Rangers don't have on a player that's capable of doing that. Or, you know, maybe Michael Beale and the scouting team can go and find someone like that who's at the start of their career and he can develop into being a really, really top-class centre-half. Celtic did it with Virgil van Dijk. Maybe Rangers can do it as well, but it's difficult to do that. The kind of players that Rangers have been linked with, there's the boy at Millwall whose name escapes me. Stevie will remind me.
Jake
Cooper, who's 6'6", I think there's definitely something there. He's a really, really solid defender. I've had a look at him. He's also quite good with the ball at his feet for a guy who's so tall. But he's not messing about. He's forged in the fire of the English Championship and the lower leagues, so he knows what it is to scrap and to fight. I've also got to take into account that Ben Davies is a player, I think he's 27, who still has a premium value down south. So Rangers may look at this at the end of the season and say, look, Ben, you're a good player. We like you. But is this working out? Do you want to be an in-and-out Rangers centre-half? I don't think you'd have much problem getting your £3.5 million back for Ben Davies. That is a very low amount in the context of English football. It's big for Rangers. But for a Middlesbrough or any one of these top teams in the Championship going up to the Premier League, bobbling about between the two leagues, it's nothing. And if you're looking for a guy with a left foot who can ping it about ball-dominant teams at that level, I think he's going to be probably a good signing. I would not be surprised one bit if that ends up being the outcome. Everybody just saying, right, this kind of hasn't worked for a variety of reasons, and we kind of move on. So I like him. I think he's ideal for that. I think in these games against the lower lights, he's kind of perfect. But I think Rangers need a bit more overall. It's so difficult to find that, but they've got a perfect balance between with Balogun and Helander, I think, and they need to kind of find that balance again, or find someone that can provide it on their own. It's that simple.
Interesting. Right, let's move on, because another big issue I wanted to raise, I'm aware of the time, but there was big news yesterday. The accounts were released. Just to give you some headline news on that, £8 million with regards to Edmiston House. The cost was £4 million on top of that. So around £12 million expected, perhaps to be slightly more. If I've got that wrong, please correct me. And also that the spending for players in the summer and the January transfer window, plus the paying off of Giovanni van Bronckhorst and the coaching staff, cost £0.9 million more than Rangers received for Calvin Bassey, Joe Rebo and Cedric Eaton. Jonny, that doesn't make for good reading, that does it? A lot of outlays going out there. I'm seeing a lot of debate on social media yesterday with regards to that. Is that a concern for you?
I don't think it's a massive concern, because part of this is about the way finances are spread over the course of a transfer. So it might be that Calvin Bassey, for example, who's gone to Ajax and signs a 5-year contract, the way that contract is amortized is over 5 years. So if he goes for £20, it's £4 million a year. Whereas it might be that Rangers transfer deals this summer have been front loaded into this summer, because teams have said, if you want Ben Davies, we want £2.5 million up front, then 500,000 over the remaining 2 seasons. So I don't think Rangers will have spent more than they brought in, because they've not spent 35 million, which is kind of what they've roughly brought in from the deals that we've discussed there. I think that'll pay off over future years. But it just goes to show you that Rangers have been splashing out a significant sum. This idea that the board didn't back Giovanni van Bronckhorst in the summer is not correct. You know, they've gone and they spent money on Raskin and Cantwell, who I think we all agree are 2 excellent players as well. And this is a club that doesn't have a lot of extra cash swilling about. There's a lot of people that want to go back over, like, oh, look, the Champions League money, the Europa League money. Just look at the accounts. You know, that money is not sloshing about in a fund somewhere. It's been spent. And I suppose that brings us to Edmiston House. I'm going to write about this later in the day, so I don't want to go into too much detail on it. I'm a massive supporter of Edmiston House. I believe that no club has ever regretted going big on infrastructure around to build the club for the future. I don't think that's something that there's been many instances where clubs would go on to regret. And I think there's a number of reasons why Edmiston House is a massive project. Number one, it will generate money. Rangers are predicting £1 million profit a year. That's ongoing. Number two, Rangers, who are in a constant war with their bitter rival Celtic, have less seats in their stadium. There is a gap every single year financially that Rangers have to make up. How do you make that up? Well, number one, you could redevelop Ibrox, but that's going to cost hundreds of millions of pounds, or at least 100 million. Significant, huge investment would be required to even get round to matching that. So how do you plug that gap? Well, you have to bring in revenue through other ways. You have to find creative ways to bring in the money to fill it. Edmiston House is one example of a way that you can do that. There's got to be myriad examples. There's got to be other options as well. I think that's why you're seeing talk about, well, not just talk, that's why you're seeing Rangers going to take the old Superstore and turn it into a pub before games, a sports bar.
Yeah.
And I think there's a third element as well, and I see a lot of fans criticising it. It's about giving the modern fan a better experience at games. I think that's something we've all been crying out for. It's something we've talked about in great length in the past. If you're coming to Ibrox, especially with a family, but not necessarily always with a family, you could be just coming with a few mates, you want to be able to go and have a pint. You want to be able to grab something to eat. You don't want to be showered with rain. You know, you want to be able to have a nice, larger experience than just the football itself. And it's expensive to go to follow Rangers. We know that. And I don't know about you guys watching at home, but everything that I'm hearing from people with 15-year-old kids and 18-year-old kids and 12-year-old kids is that they're less excited by the idea of a 90-minute match anymore because they're so used to watching on their phone little clips. And their attention spans aren't what our generations were, because we had to sit down with 4 TV channels, watch films in their entirety, watch games in their entirety when they were on, which wasn't very often. And now they're getting it all on their phone instantaneously. You have to create an environment that's a bit more than what we've had in the past, because that environment, you look at the cinema now, you go to the cinema, get a burger sent to your seat, you've got big reclining chairs.
Do you?
Is that a thing? This is the modern standards that is demanded by consumers. Not everyone. Stevie might not want that. He just wants the football. I'm like that. I want the football. These things are extras to me. But I think for the majority of people, you need to provide facilities, and Edmiston House does that. So I think it's three-pronged. It's very important to me. This idea that it's a vanity project, I'm not having that. I totally disagree, respectfully. I think it's a great idea that Rangers have done it. They've been extremely unlucky that they've planned it. It's been very, very cleverly planned. I know a lot of the detail about why they've done it, about filling gaps in the market in Scotland and in Glasgow. And unfortunately, COVID's hit, and the prices have gone through the roof, and we've had all this inflation. It was never supposed to cost this much, but Rangers do not control the economic situation in Europe. And unfortunately, it's actually larger than that. It's the world. And that is absolutely pushed up the costs. Would they have done it if they'd known it was going to cost how much it's going to cost? That I couldn't answer that question. Perhaps not. But there's no one to blame for a war in Ukraine, hyperinflation that came from that, alongside other economic factors that are much bigger than anything to do with the Rangers.
Can I just come in on that as well, on Edmiston House? Rangers have got to, and I've written this down, Rangers have got to get financial and sustainability regulations, right? We've got to do that. It's not called FFP anymore. That's changed now. Yeah. From Edmiston House, the restaurant, the proposed sports bar and things like that, Rangers stand to make an income, not profit, between £2 to £3 million. That is all balanced against what goes out. So we can offset that income against other costs, which ultimately means we've got more to spend in the transfer market, which is a bridge we're trying to close. Now, we can't go and spend the income on transfers, but it pays for other stuff, which allows that money then to be used. That's where we are. Now, in 10 years, if you're talking about Edmiston House costing £12 million, now on Jonny's thing as well, it's probably about £4 million over budget, and Rangers have been really unlucky. And I think that's fair to say on what Jonny's saying is spot on about costs and everything else. The other offset of that, Derek, is the car park sale and everything else was meant to bring in at least £3-4 million of that cost as well. So you're looking at the outlay for Edmiston House of being £4 million, £5 million. I think if everybody had the opportunity, we would do it, because the income of £1 million would pay that back. The other thing to look at as well is we've got zero debt from this, in terms of it's not like it's hanging over us or stuff. Directors have funded that by short-term loans, which will then be turned into shares and things like that. They've done that off their own back as well. So it's easy to look at it and say £12 million, what a mistake we've made. We shouldn't have done this. What would people be saying if Rangers had started the project and then just shelved it and just left it as, a building site at the back? What would that then say for us? Because people would immediately say that's a business in trouble. Why can't they afford to do that? So the commitment the board have shown to get this done and fund it and everything else, I think has been the right thing to do. They've been extremely unlucky during it. And like Jonny says, see if you'd said to them at the start, this is going to cost £12 million, I'm not so sure they would have done it. So you have to look at it separately, take the price and cost of it away from it all. What's it going to give you? What's it going to be important for in the next 10 years? And that's what it is. So we've got this financial and sustainability regulations to get to, and that's where we are. So I get the annoyance that it costs so much. I understand it completely, but it's very simplistic just to say we should never have spent £12 million on Edmiston House. That's not fair on anyone. And you have to look at the bigger picture of what we're trying to do, how it's came to that cost and where it is. So see if we had won 4-3 on Saturday, people wouldn't be highlighting Edmiston House and the issues the moment. The other big moment from the accounts, Derek, is, and I'm conscious of time and I don't want to waste people's time and stuff like that. The issue with what we spent last summer, this goes back to our conversations, Jonny and I, everything else. I understand it completely. The issues that we've had last summer isn't with what we've spent, it's how we've spent it. Was $4 million on Ben Davies a good investment? Was $4-5 million on Ridvan Yilmaz a good investment? Was £3 million on Rabbi Matondo, etc.? Is that value for money? Are you getting value for money there? That's the issue we've got. That's why Ross Wilson's under scrutiny. The wage bill's too high. We know all this. If we have a summer, this summer approaching, where we've got £15 million to spend, I will be utterly delighted. But it has to be right, and you have to get value for money. I don't think anyone's criticising the board for not spending. I think that's clear that that's happened. It's got to be better than what it is, and it's got to be more value for money. And to quantify that as well, Derek, I'm not saying that Ridvan Yilmaz at that amount of money won't be a good signing in a year's time or whatever. Was he what we needed last summer when we vitally needed players in other positions and to hit the ground running? That's the questions that the fans have been asking, and that's why people have been criticising Ross Wilson. And that just sums up, without saying I told you so or anything, that's the worst thing I could possibly say, and it's not meaning to be that. That's why I've criticised Ross Wilson. That's why I've went after him so heavily. We cannot afford to have a Rabbi Matondo for $3 million and 30 grand sitting on the bench and not performing every week. It has to be spot on. Come the summer, there's no room for mistakes. We have to get this absolutely correct. That's why the pressure and scrutiny is on Ross Wilson. That's why people are complaining.
Yeah, Derek, one thing I remember, I remember a story from back in the day, David Murray and Dick Advocaat. And Dick Advocaat was banging on Murray's door about a training ground because Rangers were training on public parks in the 90s. Walter Smith had them at the West of Scotland cricket ground, etc., etc. And that's embarrassing. The public could just rock up and just watch Rangers training. You know, you don't have to be too smart about it to say all that stuff with Marcelo Bielsa would have chased Rangers around if Dick Advocaat hadn't made the decision to actually go ahead and build the training ground. Because David Murray said to him, look, it's going to cost £12 million. You can have that for a couple of players, or you can have the training ground. And Dick Advocaat said, you know what, long term, even though it'll harm me, it'd be better for me to have that in the team. Let's go and actually build this stadium, this training ground. And I think it's safe to say that Auchenhowie has been an important part of Rangers since then. Now, there's not been as much success as we would have liked over that 20-year period or whatever it is, but I think in terms of attracting players, in terms of being an elite club, you absolutely need a top-level training ground. So that decision by Dick Advocaat has long-term been a very, very good one, and one that has shown foresight. And I absolutely think Edmiston House is the same thing. You're never going to regret investing money in infrastructure. Now, £12 million, Stevie just named 3 players, right? Ben Davies, Ravi Matondo, Yilmaz. That's the guts of £12 million right there, if all their conditions are met, if all their extra parts of their contract. That's fleeting, guys. That's 3 players that might or might not be successful. This is there for the rest of the next 50 years. And providing excellent service to Rangers fans, something that will help the club in the long term. So I'm not one of these guys that's ever going to say that money should be spent on the park. This club is bigger than just what's in the park one season. It's about the long-term sustainability of Rangers. We've all seen how the movie ends if you do not focus on that aspect of running a club. And I'm cheered by the fact that this board are prepared to make decisions that are in the long term. I think it's absolutely right, and it will only benefit the club in the long term. Now, I suppose it depends on how much it finally costs, but I don't think, as Stevie has said, and as I've already said, that's necessarily the fault of the club when we've had the geopolitical events that have taken place after it was signed off, and there is absolutely nothing you can say that would have allowed Rangers to have known that would be the case, that you would see the price of steel and anything to do with construction go up massively. Go and ask for a home quote to get your roof done or to get an extension put on now. It's 60%, sometimes more than it was 3 years ago. And that's because of all this that's been going on. It's just, you cannot get the materials required, never mind the manpower, which has also gone up significantly. So it's been a real problem.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in. I mean, it's all about opinions at the end of the day. RFC72 says, wrong timing for Edmiston House on the park, more important at this moment in time. And Denzel says, there's a time and place for infrastructure development, money spent at the wrong time in the wrong place. Gordon Bond raises a point, says the 12 million was only there for Edmiston House. It's out of a different budget than players' funds, so it's not like we've taken it out of the player budget. And this pressing point, just going back to your comment about getting burgers brought to your seat in the cinema. Aldo wants to know what cinema you're going to, Johnny, because that sounds absolutely magnificent.
The Everyman.
There you go. The other cinema providers are available, but there you go, Aldo, the Everyman. If you want your cheeseburger brought to your seat, that's cinemas have certainly come a long way since I was last there. But that'll do us there, folks. It was a bumper show this morning. Big thanks to Jonny and Stevie, a number of important issues discussed on the show. Just a quick reminder, if you want to subscribe to the website, just £2 for 2 months worth of content at the moment. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. We'll be back again tomorrow. It'll be myself and Joshua on the video. We hope you can join us then. But until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye for now.